Welcome to the VOPCast, brought to you by Banfico. In this series, we explore the key challenges and opportunities in staying compliant with the upcoming instant payment regulation, with a special focus on verification of payee and how banks can go beyond compliance to proactively reduce fraud, protect their customers, and build trust. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the VOPCast series. I'm Jonathan Cardwell, Business Development Lead at Banfico, working on verification of payee, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Brian Cunnington of Chile Europe. I think it's fair to say that, Brian, you and your team were pretty instrumental in the development and delivery of confirmation of payee, of the confirmation of payee scheme that's now live in the UK. It's great to chat to you.
Thanks very much, John. Yeah, it was. We were very proud to be associated with it. It was a very long journey, and quite a number of our team over the sort of 4 or 5 years that we were in it from the very beginning, designing it and then implementing it. Quite a number of us have been involved.
It's perfect, and great to have you here. So listen, obviously we're here to talk about verification of payee, specifically name matching, right? Name matching is obviously a fundamental component of the verification of payee scheme, right? And the EPC has already published some name matching guidelines. So I think it's probably worth us just exploring what the EPC has said about name matching and some of the key components of the requirements, right? I don't think it's massively surprising that it's somewhat already aligned with what we've seen in other schemes. So, for example, in confirmation of pay, it's the responsibility ultimately of the responding PSP to perform that name matching, for example, and the results are generally categorized as like a full match, a close match, a no match, or an unable to match, right? So it's fairly closely aligned, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is aligned, and that's no surprise because that has proved to be the way to make this service work by having some very clear outcomes, which is match, close match, and no match, plus of course the usual technical outages. But that is exactly why I think the EPC has adopted it. It's a lighter version of the matching rules that I've seen in my experience, but they have built in the ability to review that as the service launches and beds in.
Yeah, perfect. So I suppose if we deep dive into some of the key features within the actual scheme itself, what are you kind of noticing? What are the key elements that people should look out for?
Well, the key features from what I can read is at a high level, the key features are all about the PSPs. There is an expectation that data is clean. Things like upper and lower case, accents, titles, stray characters, they should all be cleansed out, and they shouldn't muddy the result that is used for when giving an answer. We've already talked about the defined match categories, the match, close match, and no match. And also the key part of this, the bit in the middle, which is the close match, it's about how you deal with those small errors, swapped letters, initials, phonetic equivalents, etc. They are really important guidelines to have in there. But it's important that those are quite tight in their description, not to allow too much flexibility. And of course, at the end of the day, the final decision is made by the responding PSP, and they will take the liability accordingly for the response that they give.
Yeah, I think that's always a question, right? When is a close match actually a close match, and how do you define a close match? And I think you hit upon something there on languages and diacritics, right? So I think one of the key aspects of verification of payee is inherently it has to cover multiple countries, right? I think 20 to be exact for the October 2025 deadline. Naturally, that's going to cause headaches and challenges, right? And again, let's specifically talk about the languages and diacritics, right? If I'm making a payment, for example, from my Irish bank account to a German bank account, I don't inherently have the ability within my mobile banking to produce certain accents or an umlaut, for example, in Germany. I physically can't do that within my keyboard, within my mobile banking. So how are we actually going to ensure, an accurate and effective name match algorithm, or how is each PSP going to ensure that?
Well, I guess the first point to remember is that Yes, of course, there's a cross-border element to VOP. By its definition, it covers the whole of Europe. So those challenges that you just described are absolutely there. But I would suggest that the vast bulk of transactions will be in country. So diacritics and keyboard layouts and things like that should be perfectly capable of being dealt with by those in-country banking systems and what people have as keyboards. However, the cross-border nature of it will mean that at least a number of those transactions will need to be dealt with, and the responding PSP will need to be able to deal with and accept those diacritics within the message, and be able to filter them such that they can convert them into, for example, a standard Roman alphabet, so that the system can then do a check against its algorithm, which will give the best possible chance of doing a match. It's fact. We had this conversation in the UK, and in the UK we don't have that sort of problem. So it will be multiplied. It will be a bigger issue, but to be honest, it should be capable of being dealt with very easily.
Yeah, and going further from languages and diacritics, there's naturally going to be other challenges present whenever you're performing name matching, right, for the responding PSP. And I'm sure these are things that you've seen, you've thought about, you've handled within confirmation of pay. But just off the top of my head, you're looking at, say, variations in the spelling of names, right? There are even multiple ways. I'll be egotistical. There are multiple ways to spell Jonathan. There are nicknames if someone wants to shorten your name from Brian to Bry, for example.
Yeah.
Even things like cultural differences across countries, right? The ordering of names, middle names, even incomplete data from responding PSPs. Like, these are all factors that I'm sure are going to have to be taken into account.
Oh, completely. And the better name matching algorithms will be able to adapt to that. So they will recognize Pete versus Peter, John versus Jonathan, and they will accept those as being acceptable alternatives. It won't cater for everyone, but that's why it's important that the education of the paying customer or the paying community is that they are told what name to use when sending or when setting up the payment. Education is key in all of this. This is what we found in the UK, and I know others have had exactly the same. Education is absolutely critical to this.
Yeah, and you talk about better algorithms, right? So if I'm a PSP, I naturally want the most effective, accurate name matching algorithm I can possibly have. Surely I just want, and I'm saying this slightly tongue in cheek, surely I just want an algorithm with the highest possible match rate, right? The more green ticks I get, the more messages I say proceed with payment, the better for me, right?
You would assume that, wouldn't you? In my experience, that's not the case. The matching algorithm has got to balance security with user experience. One of the reasons why the close match exists is to help that and make it very clear to the customer that no, this isn't a match, but it is close. So it does allow that the negative of a no match to be mitigated somewhat with typos, etc., as we spoke just now. But a high match rate is not always a win. That might mean that your algorithm is too loose and you're going to risk letting in fraud through the door. Effectiveness really means minimizing false positives, avoiding the false negatives, which cause the payment friction, of course, handling all of that multilingual data, and have the ability, don't, whatever you do, don't hard code this in. Make sure that you have the ability to tune your algorithms as you go along with fuzzy logic, nicknames, etc., as we talked about. And at the same time, sticking to the matching guidelines that the EPC have come up with, because that will make sure that you've got the compliance service, and you will get a good outcome for your customers.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point where you're saying don't hard code this stuff as well, right? You need to have a set of business rules that are configurable, like you said, handle things like nicknames, entities, even for corporates, right? Is it an LLC? Is it a GmbH? So on and so forth. So that's kind of I suppose, the effectiveness of the algorithm. I suppose what are the factors that actually affect the quality of the algorithm? And I'm speaking kind of from a PSP perspective here. So naturally, they're going to have really good data. If their data of their customers isn't up to scratch, it's going to be very hard to perform an accurate name matching.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, and let's be clear, we're talking about a few thousand banks or firms. They will all have a lot of them will have different services, different systems. The way they record the names, they'll either use a string for the whole lot, or they'll collect middle name, first name, middle name slash middle initial, and the surname, and that will differ across different banks. So the ability to be able to take the data in within that API and be able to manipulate it in such a way that they can get a good response out will be absolutely critical.
Yeah.
You can't have, or you can have a unified accounting system. It just doesn't happen because everybody uses something slightly different.
Yeah. And I suppose also from a non-technical or non-data cleansing point of view, the risk appetite of the PSP has to come into account here, right? A PSP should be able to, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, make a algorithm more lenient or make it more strict, depending on the internal compliance teams, depending on the risk appetite of that PSP.
Yes, absolutely. There is a balance to be struck, but really be very cautious about being too strict because then you're just going to get a lot of very unhappy customers because payments won't go through. One of the things that we found in our experience is that once it's implemented, if you start see a low match rate, so you then start to get really customers just refusing to make payments, and that's not a good outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's again another key point. Verification of pay is ultimately going to add friction to the payment journey just by the very nature of what it does. Within the UK, how have you seen the friction being handled?
Well, I mean, without going into the percentages in detail, because I'm not sure how public they are, what we have seen is those percentages of match, close match, and no match have virtually been the same since day one. They fluctuated a bit, and we've had a number of PSPs that did implement quite stringent controls, and others decided to let an awful lot more. And what we've seen over time is they've all come into line, and broadly, you can paint this a picture that says this is what our match rate is going to be this month compared to the last month, compared to the next month, etc. It very quickly smooths out, and people become used to it. That's the key. And if you can get used to it, but more importantly, have the confidence that you're making a payment and it is being checked.
Listen, obviously the deadline is October 2025. We're not far away from that. I would say if any banker PSP hasn't yet really started considering or started implementing name matching verification of pay to start very quickly. Brian, any kind of closing remarks from yourself on either name matching or verification of pay in general?
Verification of pay is a fantastic service, whatever you call it, confirmation of pay, verification of pay, IBAN, name checking, etc. It is a very effective service. Customers, as soon as they start seeing it, they expect to see it. So if you as a PSP are not implementing it or behind the curve, be sure you're going to get customer feedback about it.
Wise words as always, Brian. Always good to speak to you. Thank you, man.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for watching this episode of the VOPCast. For more information or to schedule a demo, contact our experts at VOP@banfico.com. Don't miss the next episode. We'll be back with more insights to help you meet the October deadline.